Okay, excuse me. We have a case here today this is actually from our office, site number 14. And as you can see on the radiograph that you see here on the screen, number 14 is pretty badly broken down. This is the bite wing. And then here is um, the PA. The initial reaction, this patient was seen by a member of the office, not by myself. Our initial reaction, or his or her initial reaction from this PA was that an immediate placement, number one, the tooth needs to come out. Non-restorable, certainly if it's restorable and with endo and build up and everything, it's certainly not a great long-term prognosis. And the patient understands that and is okay with having to have an implant placed. So it was advised that an immediate placement may not be possible in this particular case. And looking at this particular x-ray, I can certainly understand when we look right here, and with the palatal root, the palatal root right here, I can certainly understand why this possibility was explained to the patient. But my key in all of this is we should never make implant decisions without looking at the 3D and planning the 3D and understanding the implant that we're using. So what I would like to do is I went ahead and brought up the 3D for this particular patient. I'm going to go hide the implant. And I want to point out what I'm looking at and how I'm making these decisions that I believe that this would be a site for immediate placement. And I do believe that we would be able to get tremendous torque on this implant with great stability. Of course, that is all going to be dependent on getting the tooth out atraumatically, keeping the walls intact. But by sectioning the tooth and taking out each individual root, this shouldn't be a problem at all. So let's zoom in to site number 14. And the first thing I'm going to look at right here, the first thing I'm looking for is I scroll from mesial to distal. So now we're going to go mesial to more distal, and I see some good separation of the roots. And by that I mean right here is the root, and then right probably there is the buccal root. So I have all of this area right in here to try to get my implant in. So I'm going to continue to move through here, and there we can see the separation a little bit more clearly, the palatal root and the buccal root here. And then in looking this direction, again, I can also see that there's some separation between the mesial and distal buccal roots here. And as I go buccal to lingual, we can see again that there's a good amount of bone right here. Now, one issue that we may run into in this particular case is the sinus. It doesn't look to be the healthiest sinus right here. There is some thickened sinus lining right through here. But again, I think these are all manageable items. Right here is the palatal root, the buccal root, outline of the tooth right here. You can see the extensive breakdown of the tooth, and what I see here is great fresh bone. Now, that's not a lot of bone, don't get me wrong, but it is a very good bone. So even if there's good bone there, first and foremost has to be ideal implant placement. So for me, what I like to begin with is let's go ahead and start with taking a look at my implant plan that I made. I go to the implant align view, and what I'm looking at here is the axial view, and I plan my implant based on ideal. And so there's my lingual extent, there's my buccal extent, there's my mesial extent, and there's my distal extent. And in an ideal world, X marks the spot. So if we draw a line from there to there and there to there, my implant head should be right in this area. So I'm pretty darn close to getting this implant in the exact right spot to be able to be restored. So, if anything, we had mentioned that maybe we need to bring it just a hair distal and just a hair buccal. So now we're back in X marks the spot. So, so now what I look at is I'm closely looking at this screen right here, and what I'm evaluating here is I'll use multiple colors. That is tooth right there. Okay. And then now what we have is all of this is fresh bone right there to hold our implant. Now, the bigger question here is how big of an osteotomy are we going to fabricate for this particular implant? Traditional implants may require an osteotomy that's that big, okay? Because that's the inner diameter of the implant. Remember, we're in the posterior maxilla, so we're in softer bone. So the bone will condense, will be able to be condensed. But if we add to that the use of an active style implant, what I would like to do is show you that my experience has shown that I can place this 5 millimeter implant by simply using a 3 millimeter osteotomy. So what I did was I went here to change implant, and instead of using an implant brand, I used generic. And what generic does is it brings up the ability to simply change the diameter of the implant. So what I did here is I changed it to 3.0, and what that shows me is what the osteotomy would look like. Now here's that implant, and I made it a separate plan here for educational purposes. Here's that implant based on just a 3.0 osteotomy. Now, what's important to see here is, remember, this area right here is all bone, correct? So look how much bone we have right here for engagement, right through here. All of the threads of this implant, including that cortical plate right there, will all get engaged with this implant. And as we're driving that implant in, it will condense and expand this site, placing that implant in that area. Now, what's important to understand is when we do the osteotomy, that's bone that's gone, that we drill away. So another option, even in this particular case, not necessary, but another option would be even to do a 2.0 pilot drill and then use bone condensers and expanders to expand our osteotomy. So we keep even more of this fresh bone right here to help stabilize our implant. Again, in this particular case, I don't think that would be necessary because I firmly believe that we could use just a 3.0 drill and still have plenty of bone to gain the stability for this implant. So the key point here is it's important to look. Now, one other thing, I'm sorry, I'm a little ADD here this morning, is to look that we will definitely need to do a little bit of a sinus bump, but boy, oh boy, this will be pretty straightforward. Just do your osteotomy to about right here. So this is a 10 millimeter implant. I'll do my drill to about, probably in this case, 9 millimeters. Let's just measure here. So right here, top of the implant to the base of the floor. Do that again. Top of the implant to basically the base of the floor is 8.87 millimeters. So you do your 8-9 millimeter drill, and then you up fracture, and you should be good to go. So I would beg to differ that this could be placed with an immediate placement. The benefits of an immediate placement are less trauma for the patient, less visits for the patient. The other risk that we have is by when we do this graft here, there's some chance that there could be pneumatization of the sinus here. So, we just want to minimize some of those risks that we take, and certainly beneficial time-wise, and truthfully, it's not significantly more time to go ahead and place the implant at the time of extraction. So just wanted to give my thoughts on this particular aspect of the case. Thank you very much.